Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Lieutenant Stephen Rogers here on the East Coast of the United States of America. Welcome to Campaign for America. My co-host will be joining me in a few minutes, John McCann, and we've got a lot to talk about and a lot of information to share with you that the mainstream media is either twisting, turning, fabricating, and not exactly giving you, the American people, facts in relation to a lot of issues that have occurred this past week. To begin with, I'm really pleased to share with you that we are now working with the RNC with regard to many media broadcasts over the past several weeks. And we're going to soon, hopefully, be meeting with members of the team in D.C. and also with the National Republican Congressional Committee. Now, why would we be meeting with them? Well, there are a heck of a lot of congressional races around the country. We want to make sure that the Congress is returned to the Republican Party, which means the United States Congress will be returned to the people. So Campaign for America is going to do everything possible to help that become a reality. And we'll share with you more on that as time goes on. But, you know, I've talked about unity for quite some time, and we're making great strides. People are beginning to come together in this party. We're hearing from a lot of Democrat conservatives, which I find very interesting, who are not necessarily going to change their party, but they're certainly going to change their vote come not only this November with some of the state elections, but we're hearing a lot about where they're going to go in 2022 with regard to the United States Congress. And I'll be talking to John McCann about that in a minute. One more announcement before we proceed with some real interesting news. I'm going to be in Palm Springs, Florida, and I'm actually going to be a keynote speaker at a rally in Broward County. Now, this is a rally that's going to be sponsored by JEXIT. It's one of the greatest organizations in the country, and it's all about God, country, and family. And we expect a very large crowd. They draw a tremendous amount of people at their rallies. So if you live in Florida, or even if you live anywhere in the United States and would like to attend, just email us, and we'll make sure that we get the information and the links to you. All right, let's get with something that's very troubling. And John, I've got to tell you, I did see today, because I am a career military man, I did see today the hearings regarding the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, General Mark Milley. He was responding to Representative Matt Gaetz's comments about the critical race theory being included in the West Point curriculum. I got to tell you, to me, it was a disgrace. It was embarrassing. But I know you want to tackle this topic very concisely. So just to give a little background to the people that don't know this, but while our military is being trained with regard to critical race theory and other curriculum brought to us by Lenin, Marx, and Stalin. And by the way, John, Milley did mention that, and I can't wait to hear from you about that. The Russian military, this is a fact, folks, is using what the U.S. military is doing with their troops in a classroom on commercials. Some of the commercials, I understand, is our military are entering battlefields with pink uniforms on and flowers, while the Russian military is being trained to destroy us. And it's not only the Russian military, but it's the Chinese military also that are now using all of this nonsense that the Joint Chiefs of Staff seems to support. That's going to hurt our country. And there's more going on, which I'll share with you later. There was something really troubling in the Black Sea with regard to Great Britain and the Russian military. We're lucky, John, we weren't dragged into the war in the past 48 hours. John, so you saw what General Milley said. What does John McCann say?
Well, first of all, I have a lot of respect for anyone in service and anyone in the military, but I can't imagine, what it's like today to have your career as an officer dependent upon following an ideology that is wrong and is evil. And you've spent most of your career protecting this country supposedly from it. So what I saw the chairman's comments about the fact that he read Lenin and Marx and Mao, but that doesn't make him a communist. And that was basically his argument as to defend the notion that they're teaching critical race theory in the military. But let's talk about that in terms of why that's a false flag straw man argument, Steve. As you know, I taught political science, and I taught those theories as theories that are in the world as to how we got to where we are today. We talked about Karl Marx, how he was a failed newspaper reporter. He was unemployed, how he hooked up with Engels and devised the Communist Manifesto, and why that book was written, and how the ideology was provided, and how it was used for political purposes by the Reds in the early 1900s to mobilize a revolution. But the general's comments are off base. We're not suggesting that people should not be aware of these ideologies. In fact, if you want to really understand the American Constitution and what makes it so great, it's good to read the enemies of freedom and liberty. But that's not what they're doing. They're training them in this ideology. By all accounts, they are not just presenting to the students, here's an ideology that's been floating out there like any other theories, whether it's an economic theory, whether it's a political theory, whatever. They are training our soldiers in critical race theory. So it's not just simply saying, hey, I read it, what's wrong with reading it, but what's wrong with knowing about it? What they're doing, by all public reports, and some people that I've spoken to in the military, is that they are embracing and indoctrinating them into these theories. And that's also what's going on in the schools. It's not just simply they're saying, hey, here's Marxist philosophy, and this is why it works, and this is why it doesn't work. That's what they're missing. They're not talking about why it doesn't work. They're making students in schools, okay, engage in behaviors during the day, separating kids out in classes, and we know they're doing that in the military as well. So there's a big difference between presenting a philosophy or an ideology as a theory from putting it in practice. And that's what I object to. And I think the chairman knows the difference himself. And so this is always what concerns me, when our leaders directly lie and obfuscate and conflate ideas in their argument and in the defense, then we have a real problem. And that was stunning today. He knows the difference between implementing the ideology, which is what they're doing, and discussing it. No, I'll discuss anything. I'd like to debate personally myself Marxist ideology with the good Joint Chief of Staff Chairman, because I'm sure ultimately he would have to agree with me. Okay, so it's very troubling. It's false. But what the general did today, what the chairman did today, was false. And to use a Trumpism, I'm sorry to do so for some people, but for me, it was fake. It was a false premise and a cheap way to treat the American people.
John, in my 25 years of military service, I have never seen our United States military become weaponized politically. And this is exactly what is going on. Ladies and gentlemen, I've got to tell you, we have the strongest, brightest, greatest military on earth that is being destroyed by its own leaders. And it hurts me to say that. And as John said, I'm proud of our young men and women, but I'm not very proud of the leadership anymore, because they've gotten sucked into this political ideology that is hell-bent on destroying our country. Now, John, the Joint Chiefs of Staff, every single one of them, including the chairman, where have they been for the past few months? Are their heads in the sand? Don't they see parents, moms and dads and grandparents, aunts and uncles, adults all over the country are rushing to their school boards condemning the CRT, the critical race theory? I mean, is this guy out of touch or what? And that is troubling, because as you know, John, and as many of you who are watching who are military veterans, our job is to fight and win wars. We are to be combat ready 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, well trained to take on any enemy and to destroy that enemy. But unfortunately, the political weaponization of our military is now in progress. And what's really troubling, John, it's not only in West Point and the Naval Academy when these new young soldiers, sailors, and airmen come into the military, but they're dragging our troops off the fields and they're bringing them into classrooms. And while they're in classrooms, look, folks, let's face it. Yeah, I was a military officer, a lieutenant commander, okay? So when I would speak to a subordinate, yes, sir, no, sir, yes, sir, no, sir, that's it. You're not going to get any opinions, any ideas in fear that you may really tick off your commanding officer. Now, there were times that we'd have commanding officers like myself. I would say if there's anyone that has a problem with what I said, my door's open. And there are a few gentlemen and ladies who came in and said, Commander, I've got an issue with this. Can we talk? That's how you do it. But think about this, folks. Just think about this. John, it reminds me of what we studied about the Soviet military, the political officers in the ranks. So now you're going to have, and we talked about this months ago, people in the ranks working next to you, wondering if I say this or I say that, is that person going to report me to my commanding officer and I'm going to be court-martialed, decommissioned, or whatever? Because it has happened, John. Remember? It has happened. So now the question is, John, you know, I would tell people, look, send your children into the military, serve in the Army, Navy, Marines, Air Force, serve your country. And I still advocate that. But folks, we now have to defend our military men and women. Look, they're defenseless, absolutely defenseless when they're in the lower ranks. We have to defend them, just like the parents are defending their children across this country. And let me tell you something. If you're in a township, if you're in a city where the Board of Education has taken complete control of your children, you need to step up and get involved. John, we predicted this would happen on this broadcast. It went from business and industry, went to the political realm of things. Now it's in the military. And I remember warning the people on this broadcast when we talked about the 300 to 400 to 500 universities that the Chinese Communist Party had direct influence in, that it was coming to high schools. Well, it's here. So, John, we need to, and I'm sure you'll agree, and I know you've done this, encourage people to step up, to speak out, and get involved. It is now a matter of the survival of this country. It's no longer a Democrat-Republican problem. This is now an American survival problem.
Look, the people have to protect their children. And if parents are not willing to stand up and protect their children, I don't know what else they would fight for. It's a very basic concept. Your children, under this pernicious, evil indoctrination process, are going to end up hating them. I mean, that's George Orwell. That's, if you recall 1984, the children were the spies on the parents, okay? And turning their parents in. I mean, that's what we're talking about here. So I encourage all the parents out there, New Jersey, New York, Massachusetts, all the way across to California, pay attention to what's going on in your school boards and don't stand for this. And in fact, Steve, the fact of the matter is most of these elected officials on the school boards who are promoting this, they will back down because they don't have a stomach for real political elections. You know how school board elections go. Most people don't want to run for that job because it's a lot of work. And the people that do want to run have been very successful in now implementing this communist agenda. But I want to touch upon something else Miley said today that really concerned me. He said that we are concerned with extremism. Now, he's starting to sound like Joe Biden. Okay, the chairman of the Joint Chiefs is starting to sound like the actual president. He said they wanted to get to the root cause of January 6th. Well, we know what the root cause was. Okay, it was a riot. Okay, we now have reports that there may be unindicted co-conspirators that are unknown to us. We want to know what's going on. We have a lot of footage that has not been seen, and there was one death, and it was committed by a member of the government killing an unarmed civilian. So when he said we want to get to the root causes of extremism to discuss January 6th, that's a dog whistle. That's a dog whistle. And so they are not just moving against President Trump. They're moving against the very political philosophy of working hard and playing by the rules, okay, and coming out on top that way. They're working against that basic American principle. And to see the chairman of the Joint Chiefs talk about a root cause of a riot, well, why don't they have a little transparency? Why don't they release all of the video? Why do we have people, first-time offenders, from what I'm told, almost 500 people sitting in a jail cell, okay?
Well, John, time out of
Why is that happening? Why can't we see the evidence? Why can't we see what's going on? Well, where's the transparency in that event?
Well, John, time out 1 second, all right? You bring up a good point. What in the world is the U.S. military involving itself in a law enforcement civilian criminal justice issue? That is what's troubling. And John, to your point, you bring up a good point. Why did it even go there? The United States military is not in control of our law enforcement agencies. So this guy on his own, or maybe with the blessing of Biden, sends a warning to the American people. Guess what? Guess who's in charge? This is really dangerous stuff, folks. Dangerous, dangerous stuff. Now, January 6th, no, President Trump, and I know a lot of people don't want to hear this, he didn't cause that thing. He didn't incite ridiculous things. You know, that's ridiculous, but they got to blame somebody. And yes, it was a riot. I don't condone it. I think it was wrong. I don't think anybody should have been breaking into the buildings and all that. But saying that, when I think of a root cause, John, I really mean this. Years and years and years of frustration and anger at both political parties, promising so much to the American people and delivering nothing, because we seem to be at square one every 4 or 8 years after a Republican is removed from office. So they could say, well, you know what, Lieutenant, you're one of those people that won't accept reality. Well, I do accept reality based on the facts that I see, not on the facts that people make up. But moving on, John, with this, you know, this is another troubling thing about this critical race theory. There's a columnist in New Jersey, and I tweeted this out the other day. Apparently, and it's not only happening here in New Jersey, but it's around the country, these left-wing propagandists, okay, decide to use a weapon called a pen to all their readers and others, are stating that it would be in the best interest of the New Jersey GOP. I'm talking about New Jersey now, and I'm sure a lot from around the country have seen this. The best interest of the New Jersey GOP to support critical race theory. And here's the kicker, folks. Now listen, if you're from Florida, listen to this. And then I'm going to share something with you. And they went further and said, at least intimated, that any relationship with Florida Governor DeSantis is political suicide. Now, Florida Governor DeSantis, Ron DeSantis, no doubt in my mind, is going to travel around the country, and he's going to support Republican gubernatorial candidates and congressional candidates. This is what this man does. He keeps America first. He's helping everybody he could to make sure our country is put on the right track. But early on now, John, because I believe, and if God willing down the road, Ron DeSantis decides to run for president, I believe that he'll win the presidency because he's trying to bring this country back. Now, saying that, already they're on the attack. They're already hitting him hard. And I warned, call it a warning, suggestion, whatever you want. But I've got it. Every GOP, and there are many listening tonight, many of the leaders and chair people from around the country, any GOP in this country that supports critical race theory and rejects anything that Ron DeSantis wants to do or say on behalf of this country, I hope it'll be the end of that GOP. Because I tell you, here in New Jersey, I'll work my tail off to make sure that they just go away. That would be the ultimate betrayal of the people. There's no information I have that the New Jersey GOP or any GOP would go down that road. But knowing politics, John, we have a shortage in this party of courageous people. Courageous people like DeSantis, like Trump, and like others. Like you, John, when you ran for Congress, man, you really took on a lot. I mean, you took on a lot, but you stood your ground and you made it clear that I'm not going to compromise, meaning you are not going to compromise on your character and on your mission. So, John, that's what's going on now, and they're attacking early. Now, you've been involved, and what do you think we're going to go with this?
Well, when you get advice from the other side, who decides that they want to advise the GOP on how to proceed to get support in New Jersey for election purposes, you just have to do the opposite. These are not the people making these suggestions are not our friends, and the notion that the GOP in New Jersey would embrace critical race theory would essentially be the demise of the GOP in total in New Jersey. What's the difference between voting for a Republican who supports critical race theory, okay, and a Democrat who supports critical race theory? I mean, it would be a complete corruption of the process politically, not an economic corruption or speaking to anyone's character, but it would be a corruption and would be limiting the choices. And you know, Steve, people could spot a phony a mile away. Voters have a good nose for that. A few slip through here and there, but for the most part, the American voter can smell a phony. And any GOP candidate in New Jersey that would, whether they're running for Congress or whether they're running for school board or local council, that would endorse critical race theory, in my mind, might as well just switch parties. But I don't believe. I believe, as you point out, in my experience, there's something else going on. And back in 2016, I believe there were 18 candidates running at one time. Steve, is that correct?
Yeah.
18 candidates. And that brings in a lot of different interests from different state GOPs and competitive GOPs. And, if we should have a candidate coming out of New Jersey again, like we did in 2016, that may be what's going on here too, trying to keep Governor DeSantis from New Jersey by GOP members as well. So, I mean, there's a lot of politics involved in that, and that'll play out. But the bottom line is, we don't even know what President Trump is going to do. What if President Trump runs again? Okay. Yeah. We saw the straw poll in Florida. At this point, of course, it's meaningless. But to have a Republican like DeSantis stand up to the lockdowns, stand up and be proven empirically that every policy decision he made, which was antithetical to what Fauci was recommending and the CDC, proved to be correct. And it wasn't easy to do. And now look at what all the Republican governors are now doing. They're sending people to support Texas and Arizona borders. Okay. I mean, that's what we'd be needing to doing. And the GOP in New Jersey would be wise to start attacking the socialist governor we have in New Jersey, as opposed to starting attacking other Republicans.
Well, you just hit on something. The difference, ladies and gentlemen, between the political fights of the past, Republican versus Democrat, is simply this. Our enemy is not the Democrat Party of JFK, of FDR, not the Democrat Party of the old days. Our enemy is the Democrat Party of the 21st century that has embraced socialist, communist policies. Believe me, folks, and we've urged people, this is not just rhetoric. Read Marx, read Lenin, read Stalin, read about the Russian Revolution, read about, in fact, talk to people who have lived in communist countries, and they'll tell you it all began exactly the way we're seeing it unfold in many states across the country, especially here in New Jersey. Which leads me to this, John, as we move on with our topics. And I got to tell you, every morning I woke up this week, you got this labor union, the carpenters union, the fire union, this union, that union, endorsing Phil Murphy for governor here in this state. Other unions endorsing around the country, Democrat governors, Democrat legislators. And the thing that really is astonishing, and many of the labor people are watching this, all right, and union members, is that they're supporting the very people that took food off their table. They're endorsing the very people that put them on the unemployment line. Now, if you're a union member, and I know many of you watch, and I know many of you are not going to follow the leadership of your union, but I'm going to ask you, men and women who have these people who are leading your unions, to walk into a supermarket or walk into a department store like my wife and I did last week and ask this question: where's the cashiers? I'm not kidding, folks. We couldn't find a cashier in a Bath, Bed & Beyond here in New Jersey. We could not find a cashier who was available in a supermarket. And here was the answer, folks. In one of those stores we were in, we don't have cashiers anymore. You got to go to the machine. If you have a problem with the machine, then you go to that person for help. Go shopping, folks. Nobody's working. All right. Nobody wants to work. They've replaced you union members with machines. And there's a robot running around in some of these supermarkets. Folks, this is no joke. You union members who have allowed your leaders to get in bed with these politicians are going to lose your jobs. The economy is not going to be good. Everybody knows that. Biden is gutting this country, and he's doing a darn terrible, terrible job to keep us afloat. And you all allow your union members to go out and to endorse Murphy and Biden and other Democrats around the country. I just hope that, look, John, I pray and hope that the police unions do not go down that road, because now we're talking life and death. When police unions are facing the possibility of the policies of the Democrat Socialist Communists establishing civilian review boards, and we have that in New Jersey now, John, let's talk about that. They are going down a road that is dangerous. I do not believe, do not endorse, and do not embrace civilian review boards to second guess police officers who are doing their duty. Do I support internal affairs investigations? Yes, and they do a darn good job within every single city, town, county in this state, and I know around the country. They do a darn good job, John, and you know you've been involved in government without politics involved. But civilian review boards, the members of those boards, and if you are one, you're about to be insulted. You're a political pawn. You know nothing about law enforcement, nothing about facing gunfire, nothing about watching people get stabbed and beaten and children abused, nothing about that. What on earth are you doing on a civilian review board? So the fact of the matter is, John, these are political pawns, once again, to hinder the ability of the police to do their job. And you know what? Just like here, and then I'll bring it to you, just like what I read this past weekend, folks, 38 Chicago weekend violence. You ready for this, John? This is the new crime prevention package, all right, that was developed by the Democrat Socialist civilian review boards, defund the police. Chicago weekend violence, 54 wounded in dozens of shootings, 8 killed. Chicago every weekend. And we can name every city and every city. And John, the common denominator is what? All controlled and governed by Democrat socialists. John?
Well, I live in Chicago. It's one of the jewel cities, or was, in America. You know, the third largest. But I enjoyed my time there. It was a great, vibrant town. But you could see it coming in the late 80s. You could see the policies then of Daley, what was going on as the Democrats then were being pulled to the left. The concept of civilian review boards, I'm in a unique position to talk about this, Steve. As you know, I was general counsel for the sheriffs of New Jersey, in particular one of the largest counties in New Jersey, in Bergen. And one of my jobs was to advise the internal affairs process, and I got certified in internal affairs investigations. The concept of putting a civilian review board is really, again, nonsense. Outside of the obvious, which you stated, it really doesn't do anything but the political will of the people, as you mentioned, who appoint them. Okay, the political hacks, and it adds a layer between the elected officials and the police, so that any action that's advised or to be taken by these boards, the politicians get to say, well, you know, hey, that's what the board recommended. Well, those are the people that they appointed, their friends and pals. That's how it works. But the thing that's really troubling is, what do we need that for? We already have oversight. In particularly New Jersey. New Jersey, most of the communities, okay, are small towns. Okay, and the police departments are run by mayor and councils through the police commissioners and the police committees in these towns, and that is civilian oversight. Okay, a volunteer councilman in Oakland, New Jersey, is a civilian. They are civilians. They're not, just because they're elected official doesn't mean they're not civilians. And their responsibility is to make sure when there's an internal affairs investigation that the investigation is done properly, quickly, fairly, and to weed out the chaff. And like any other group, Steve, whether it's police officers, truck drivers, plumbers, lawyers, there's going to be bad people. And that's what it's for. But these boards, their mission is to provide a layer of protection while action is being forced down the police officers' throats. And if you're a PBA president in New Jersey, and I enjoyed their support and I enjoyed working with them, but if you're supporting this guy, I understand they think he's going to win and they don't want to get him mad and they're fearful. But at the end of the day, what good is it if you get a 6% raise when the inflation rate is 20%? What good is that?
Yeah, and John, and what good is it if they're creating policies that are going to put your life and career in danger? Now, there's another thing going on with police here in New Jersey. We see, you know, Bill Murphy said he wanted New Jersey to be the East Coast California. Well, it's pretty close to achieving that. Now, folks, here in New Jersey, and we're using this as an example, and I'm sure it's happening around the country, there is now a move afoot in, I think, the legislature, the governor's office, wherever it's at right now, to have police departments release the disciplinary actions of police officers to the public. So if a cop does something that irritates a citizen, the cop is going to be, certainly, internal affairs gets involved. And now what they want to do is release this to the public. Why, folks? A lot of good cops are accused of things that they never did. I know that as a fact because I was head of a detective bureau, criminal investigation division. And I know that as a fact when we had these body cameras, which turned out to be a benefit to the police and not a hindrance. But hear me out on this. So, John, if they go down this road, meaning the legislatures, I want to, and I'm going to make an effort to at least start to drive that needed to be done, to have every single assemblyman in this state and senator and political office holder be required to release any actions against them with regard to drug use, sexual harassment, anything they ever did unethically. The people should know about it. And John, you know that they don't release that. And that should include the United States Congress. I want to know how much taxpayers' dollars have been used to pay victims off to keep these politicians, their acts quiet. I want to know that, folks. I think we have a right to know that. You know, spent 38 years of my life as a cop. I've never seen anything like this. It's the police are bad, the police are evil, the police are this, the police are that. They're being assaulted cops, they're being beaten, they're being spit on and on and on. All because of these cowards that are sitting in our state legislatures that do nothing or say nothing, only come around for the photo op. And if you're a cop, whether you be in New Jersey or anywhere, any clown comes up to you running for office and wasn't a cop, I'm going to support any cop that's running for office. But the fact of the matter is, if they weren't a cop, then don't take that photo op. You don't have to do that. You don't have to do that. You don't need to do that. But the fact of the matter is, John, what's good for the cops should be good for the legislators. And by the way, let me add this. Police officers and many people in the public service professions, they have to have mental health evaluations before they get the job, during the time they're on the job, drug tests. Well, why don't we have our political office holders have mental health tests every so often? They're not prejudiced. They're not biased. You know what? They're passing laws that I think are really causing a lot of pain and suffering in our communities. They are the root cause. Joe Biden is the root cause. Phil Murphy is the root cause. Governor Newsom, and on and on and on with every Democrat. And if there are any Republicans in there that you can find, I'd throw them in there. They are the root cause of the racial tension we have in this country, as well as the media, by the way. I'm not going to leave you guys out. So what we need to do, as you said, John, is wake up and get involved.
Yeah, everyone needs to get involved. It's an interesting concept, what you're talking about, Steve. You're talking, of course, when you talk about the psychological test, you're talking about the fitness of duty evaluations that could be brought upon a police officer at any time, even for a complaint from an anonymous source. Someone can handwrite a note and leave it at the police desk and say, so-and-so officer, I saw him walking in circles. And whether that's true or not, he would probably be sent out for a fitness of duty evaluation. People don't understand how strict the police work under. And it's what you talk about is I won't have to think about this, but it's interesting because the purpose of that is, the police have such a public trust. Well, don't the assemblymen of New Jersey and the elected officials have the same thing? Now, we do have certain disclosure laws, right, where you have to disclose financial interests, stocks, and things like that. You have to make your financial record. But you bring up a point. Why not? Isn't the elected official have just as much the same public trust that the police officer has? In fact, I would argue maybe more so because they are making the laws. Would it be fair for instead of political opposition finding out that their political opponent was sued 5 times, had a sexual harassment complaint dismissed, had 2 DWIs, or had a divorce where they were accused of domestic violence? Instead of letting the political process, why don't you require people who want to hold up that office to disclose all of that? Because after all, just like the police officers, when you apply for the job, you have to do that. It's a public trust. It's interesting.
And John, how about judges? You know, I mean, I really mean this. And the reason why I bring this up, folks, once we go down that road, and John, I really want to talk to you about this, all right, during the week. Once we go down that road, you know what's going to happen? Oh, we better stay away from it. It's going to go away because they don't want their criminal, unethical, terrible behavior to be revealed to the public. Because, folks, if you knew some of the stuff that we know, your hair would stand up. But that's for another day. We'll be talking about that. So, John, at the end of the day, we've run out of time to get people involved. Folks, you see down here it says, now is our time, campaignforamerica.com. That's campaign4america.com. Go to the website. You're going to see where it says contact. Push that button. Send us your name and email. We're starting to send a lot of information out. 10, 15,000 emails we have. They're going out once a month in our intelligence newsletter. We have events coming up. We do have, and John, I'm pleased, and we won't reveal the location because we're going to keep this quiet, but we do have a group of conservatives that we're going to be meeting here in New Jersey that are ready to get involved and to do what? To take control of their Board of Education. And it's going to spread throughout this state and other states. Now, as John articulated earlier, with regard to school boards and getting involved, we'll help you do that. And we don't charge a fee, folks. We're not going to say, hey, you know, why don't you send us a donation and we'll help you out. How we help you is we come to your meetings. We do this via Zoom. You want to step up and run for office. You want to get involved and make your voice heard. And John, I think you put it great. I'll let you put it great again, all right? Parents who don't defend their children, what is it that you said?
I said, if you won't defend your children from indoctrination, then what will you fight for?
Well, at that note, you have a chance to defend your children and their children's children and to defend the United States of America. So thank you, folks. On behalf of John McCann and myself, thank you for joining us. We'll be back next Wednesday night here on Campaign for America, 6:30 p.m. We're going to be away probably the first 2 weeks of July. We will be in Florida. We are making plans now to go to DC and to have our meetings there, and then Dallas, Texas. But we'll be talking about that as time goes on. John, you've been a great addition to the show. I'm getting a lot of good comments about the value that you've added to the program and this effort in trying to get the people to wake up and to move forward. And by the way, people need to know that John has been given great advice to American citizens who want to move forward with the America First agenda, because you're also, John, president of a Republican club here in New Jersey, correct?
That's correct, Steve. That's correct. Yep, yeah. Right here in our town. I mean, you just can't talk about it. You have to do it. And this is my second go around as a leader of the Republicans locally, where I lived prior to now. I was involved there as well. I sat in the council and ran for office there 3 times and won and was successful. But it's citizen government on the local level. And I was fortunate to have great teammates in my prior town. In the town now that where we are, we have great people on the council. Even I would have to say in this town, even the Democratic council people seem to care, are more traditional Democrats. I can't say the same thing for the mayor, but I think with the Democratic council person that we have on board, he's a more mainstream Democrat. But at the end of the day, they still support the socialists running for office. So that's where things are going to start to become interesting in the next few years, because even the local Democrats, if they don't stand up to the far left of their party, they might as well not run for office or join the Republican Party.
All right. At that, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for joining us tonight. See you next Wednesday, 6:30 p.m. Eastern Time here in the United States of America. And remember, always keep our country in prayer. I always say, look, there's no place else to go at times, we may think, but we can go to the good Lord and ask him for grace and mercy, no matter what you are facing personally and what this nation is facing. So thank you, folks. God bless you all. And remember, the chief end of man is what? To love and glorify God forever. Have a great week.